Today we're going over the most disrespectful acts in human history, small moments of arrogance, pettiness, and pure disrespect that spiraled into some of the deadliest wars ever fought. And I want to be clear, we're not talking about massive political conspiracies or huge military provocations. We're talking about one man insulting another man so badly that millions of people ended up dead because of it. History is full of moments where powerful men had the self-control of a golden retriever at a barbecue and made decisions that cost hundreds of thousands of lives. These are those moments. Let's get into it. Number 1. The shaved beard that killed 15 million people. It's 1218 CE and Genghis Khan is doing what Genghis Khan does best, building the largest empire the world has ever seen. The Mongols at this point had already steamrolled most of Central Asia, and Genghis had actually decided he was more interested in trade than conquest for once in his life. He sends a caravan of 450 merchants to the Khwarezmian Empire, a massive Islamic empire stretching from Persia to modern-day Afghanistan, hoping to open up trade routes to the west. He's basically extending an olive branch, a very expensive olive branch. The governor of the border city of Otrar, a man named Inalchuk, looked at this caravan of 450 merchants and their mountain of goods and decided he wanted all of it. So he accused the merchants of being spies and had every single one of them executed. Then he stole everything they'd brought and sold it to the local elite. One camel driver escaped and rode back to Mongolia to tell Genghis what happened. Now Genghis, to his credit, stays calm. He doesn't immediately invade. Instead, he sends a small diplomatic envoy, one Muslim diplomat and 2 Mongolian ambassadors, directly to Shah Muhammad, the ruler of the Khwarezmian Empire, to ask for Inalchuk to be handed over for punishment. Just give us the guy who did it. That's it. That's all he wants. Shah Muhammad's response: he executes the Muslim diplomat. Then, and this is the part that really sealed the deal, he shaves the beards of the 2 Mongolian ambassadors and sends them home. In Mongol culture, shaving a man's beard was one of the worst forms of public humiliation imaginable. It was the medieval equivalent of slapping a man in front of his entire army. Genghis Khan raised an army of 200,000 men and personally led the destruction of the entire Khwarezmian Empire, city by city, every wall torn down, every building burned. Shah Muhammad spent the last years of his life running from the Mongols until he died of pneumonia, alone on a tiny island in the Caspian Sea. Historians estimate that by the time Genghis was done, somewhere between 15 and 40 million people were dead, all because one man couldn't keep his hands off a beard. Number 2. The ear that started a war. It's 1731 and Robert Jenkins is the captain of a British merchant ship sailing through the Caribbean. Britain and Spain at this point are in an uneasy truce. Not quite at war, but definitely not friends. Spain had the right to board and inspect British ships for smuggling, which they abused constantly, using it as an excuse to harass British merchants. Jenkins was one of those merchants. One day his ship gets boarded by a Spanish Coast Guard vessel. The Spanish captain, a man named Fandino, decides Jenkins looks suspicious. What follows is less of an inspection and more of a robbery. Fandino's men loot the ship, tie Jenkins to the mast, and then, in what might be the pettiest military act in Western history, Fandino draws his cutlass and slices off Robert Jenkins' ear. He then hands the ear to Jenkins and tells him to take it to his king. Jenkins, to his absolute credit, keeps the ear. He pickles it in a jar and carries it around with him for 7 years. In 1738, he's called before the British Parliament to testify about Spanish abuse of British merchants. He reaches into his coat, pulls out the jar, and places his own severed ear on the table in front of the British government. A member of Parliament asks Jenkins how he felt when his ear was cut off. Jenkins reportedly said he committed his soul to God and his cause to his country. The British Parliament lost its mind. The public was already furious about Spanish harassment of their merchant ships, and this was the moment that pushed everything over the edge. Prime Minister Robert Walpole, who had been desperately trying to avoid war with Spain, was completely steamrolled by public outrage. Britain declared war on Spain in October 1739 in what became known as the War of Jenkins' Ear. It eventually merged into the larger War of the Austrian Succession, dragging in most of Europe and lasting nearly a decade. Tens of thousands of soldiers died, all because one Spanish naval captain thought it would be funny to cut off a merchant sailor's ear and tell him to mail it to his king. When the historian Thomas Carlyle named this conflict the War of Jenkins' Ear in the 1800s, he meant it as mockery, as in, surely no serious country goes to war over something so stupid. And yet, here we are. Number 3, the stolen wife that launched 1,000 ships. Now look, the Trojan War sits somewhere between history and legend, but the political mechanics behind it are real enough that historians still argue about them. And the core act of disrespect at the center of it is so audacious, it deserves a spot on this list. It's somewhere around 1200 BCE, and a Trojan prince named Paris has been sent on a diplomatic mission to Sparta by his father, King Priam. The Spartans are allies of Troy, and Paris has been tasked with strengthening that relationship. King Menelaus of Sparta welcomes Paris with open arms, feasts, gifts, the full royal treatment. He treats Paris like a brother, and Paris repays that hospitality by stealing Menelaus's wife, Helen, widely regarded as the most beautiful woman in the known world, and sailing back to Troy with her while Menelaus was away at a funeral. Let that sink in for a second. You are a guest in someone's house. They feed you, they give you gifts, they treat you as family, and you thank them by abducting their wife while they're at a funeral. Menelaus comes home to find his wife gone and immediately calls in every favor he's owed. His brother Agamemnon, the most powerful king in Greece, rallies the Greek kingdoms under one banner. And according to the ancient sources, over 1,000 ships set sail for Troy. The Trojan War, one of the most famous conflicts in human history, lasted 10 years. Troy was eventually burned to the ground. Tens of thousands of soldiers on both sides died. Entire cities were devastated in the aftermath as the Greek kings made their way home. Agamemnon himself was murdered by his own wife when he got back. The ripple effects of Paris stealing Helen were felt across the entire ancient Mediterranean world for generations, and at the center of all of it was one act of jaw-dropping entitlement from a prince who had the self-awareness of a houseplant. Number 4, the severed heads that ended an empire. It's 1204 CE, and the Fourth Crusade is not going great. The Crusaders, a massive army of Western European knights, had set out to recapture Jerusalem from the Muslims. Great goal. Solid plan. One problem, they'd completely run out of money before they even got there. In desperate need of funds and ships, they cut a deal with Venice. Venice would supply everything they needed. But in return, the Crusaders had to do a quick favor first. They needed to attack and recapture the Christian city of Zara on the Adriatic coast, which had rebelled against Venetian control. The Pope excommunicated the whole crusade for attacking a Christian city, and things were already deeply off the rails when the Byzantine prince Alexios showed up with an offer. Alexios's father had been the Byzantine emperor until he was overthrown and blinded by his own brother. Alexios wanted the Crusaders to help him take Constantinople, restore his father to power, and in return he would reunify the Eastern and Western Christian churches and fund the rest of their crusade. The Crusaders, broke and desperate, agreed. They sail to Constantinople, the greatest city in the Christian world, and with their help, Alexios is installed as co-emperor alongside his father. But Alexios immediately runs into a problem. He can't actually pay what he promised. The Byzantine treasury is empty. The Byzantine nobility despise him for bringing Western armies into their city. And the population is furious that their new emperor is essentially a puppet of foreign knights camped outside their walls. Things collapse fast. Alexios is strangled by a nobleman named Mourtzouphlos, who seizes the throne himself and immediately tells the Crusaders they can get lost. No money, no support, get out of Byzantine territory. He then had the heads of several Crusader envoys sent back to the Crusader camp as his diplomatic response. The Crusaders, already angry and still unpaid, decided that if Mourtzouphlos wasn't going to give them money, they would simply take Constantinople and everything in it. In April 1204, they breached the walls of Constantinople, the largest and most fortified Christian city in the world, and spent 3 days looting it. Priceless treasures accumulated over 9 centuries were stripped out and shipped to Venice. Libraries burned, ancient monuments were melted down for coin. What the Crusaders did to Constantinople is considered one of the most catastrophic acts of cultural destruction in the medieval world. The Byzantine Empire never fully recovered. Its territory shrank decade by decade until 1453, when the Ottomans finally finished the job. The Eastern Roman Empire, which had survived for over 1,000 years after the fall of Rome, was brought to its knees in large part because one man sent back some severed heads instead of a negotiator. Which honestly, in retrospect, was a terrible diplomatic strategy. Outro. So what's the lesson here? Honestly, it's pretty simple. Throughout history, the most catastrophically destructive wars weren't always started by grand geopolitical strategy or clashing ideologies. Sometimes they were started because one man was too proud, too greedy, or too stupid to show basic respect to someone who could end him. A shaved beard, a pickled ear, a stolen wife, a box of heads. Millions of people paid for those moments with their lives. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and let me know in the comments which one of these you think was the most avoidable. I'm guessing not a single person looked at Mourtzouphlos sending back severed heads and thought, yes, this will go well for us.